Yeah, but you're just recording me from, like, the nose down. And I do have a really cute Italian nose, but maybe want to get my face. And maybe from, like, another direction. You want to do that way? Okay.
I can do that too.
So, yeah, I'm really excited when Ryan asked me if I wanted to do a cutting clinic. Oh, yeah. Is that too far away, though?
You can put it, like, literally on my lap.
Sure. Let's do that.
I am high maintenance.
No, you're not.
Ryan's going to be like, God, I'm so glad this woman only comes to the office once every 5 years.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's actually the first time I've ever been in my own office, which is really funny. I was part of the San Jose office for 19 years, and it's been pretty cool to be part of this office. So I started with Cutco 21 years ago. I went to culinary school. I'm a butcher. I raise 100% of my food supply. I wrote the advanced service manual that was written about 8 or 9 years ago that's called Sherlock the Cutco Detective, that is still used throughout the company by a lot of the top reps. One of the things that I figured out as a service representative is how the knives wear. And so what I learned is there's 4 things that dull a knife. For you brand new people, this is just brand new information that don't ever share this information with a customer until you're on a service call. But it's really good information that I tell kids when I'm on demos and service calls. I think everybody needs to know this information. There's 4 things that dull a knife, right? The surface that you're cutting on. The harder the surface, the more a knife is going to wear. Okay? How hard you press. That's number 2. So the surface, how hard you press. Using the wrong tool for the job. And improper sharpening techniques. So the surface, how hard you press. Using the wrong tool for the job. And improper sharpening techniques. Those are the 4 things that dull a knife. So the way that our demo is set up is to tell people how knives are used. And for many people, it's the very first time in their entire lives that they've ever gotten this information. So even though you kids just learned this, you're teaching people who have kids your age. So think about the role that you can play in that family's lives for the first time they're actually learning how to properly use their own knives. Whatever they've got, whether they got the crap that's in their kitchen before you get there, or they upgrade to something that's high quality, U.S. made and guaranteed forever, right? And so our role is that we can really help people out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the different tools that we have in our arsenal and what those tools are used for. If you use the right tool for the job, you not only get done faster, but your knives stay sharper longer. You get done faster, your knives stay sharper longer. And that is called kitchen efficiency. Kitchen efficiency, okay? Using the right tool for the job. So we're going to go through the basics of the signature set. And I'm going to be applying these to the other tools that we have in our collection that are similar, right? So the paring knives, right? You guys are being taught the homemaker, right? You do the demo for the homemaker, right? It was designed in the 40s, hasn't changed much since. Do they know that there's other tools? They have the whole prospectus, right? Blue book, right? They have the whole blue book. I'm so old. I'm going to call it prospectus at least one more time, right? So, you know that we've got 5 paring knives, okay? The one that comes in all the sets is the 1720 2 3/4 inch paring knife, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We have 5 paring knives to choose from, and a paring knife is designed for up in the air, coring, pitting, peeling, and skinning. Write that down: coring, pitting, peeling, and skinning. Right? So you can core.
You guys, you can either write stuff in your manual next to each piece there, or on separate notes and do it later, whatever.
So you can core, peel, right? And you can skin. I haven't peeled with a paring knife in a while. Right? Anything up in the air. It's good for apples, oranges, green peppers. Right? So you can top strawberries and tomatoes. Right? You could de-seed with it. You can use the back of the knife. Oops. Let's get that. Right? De-seed with it. I'm just going to get this all over the place. Right? For anything up in the air, coring, pitting, peeling, and skinning. So if I wanted to cut things like this, I would use it. Okay? Now, if you want to cut small things on the board, you want to use something with the double D edge. The double D edge has 3 distinct straight blades between each of the teeth. The recessed blade allows you to cut straight forward, straight back, and straight down. Gives you 3 times the cutting surface for less work and less wear. You get done faster, your knife stays sharper longer. It's designed for going back and forth. These are slicing tools. The basic set, oops, not that one, comes with small, medium, and large. They all have the same edge on them. Right? You want the rounded tip. Everybody's going to call this the bread knife, but what's the name of this knife?
Slicers.
Because you slice. These are slicing tools, right? This one has the teeth on it too. And this one, the 3738, is called what?
Hardy slicer.
Hardy slicer. Not the hardy chopper, the hardy slicer for going back and forth, okay? So all of these tools are for back and forth. The higher the angle, the more you have to work. So when you're training customers, you want to have it level so you can engage all three of those blades, right? And so for the trimmer, this is a giant tomato right here, right? Right, here's a nice little green, here's a little pepper, right? If I want to slice this pepper, if I want to cut it up in the air, I'm going to use the paring knife. But if I want to slice it on the board, that's the perfect size. Thin little slices, okay? Engage all three of those blades, right? And so with this little apple, if I wanted to slice this little apple, I wouldn't want to do that because there's nothing to protect it. Plus, here's a cool little thing I learned when I was a new rep. If you press straight down, you won't cut yourself. It's a safety feature because you pare in the air, give it a little slide, and it goes right through. That's the paring knife. Up in the air. Now, if I want to slide this, if I want to slice with it, I want to use the trimmer, right? So it engages all three blades. You can see that I always start with the food closest to my hand because that's where all your weight is. Remember, you're on autopilot. Most people, when they go to cut their food, they're like, right? They're in attack mode because their knives suck. And I always tell my customers, no more pressing and sawing, right? Don't do it, right? Allow the weight of the knife to do the work for you. You get done faster, your knives stay sharper longer. Lighten load. Relax. Right, chill out, man. You're not in attack mode anymore. You got cook-up. You're on autopilot, right? So you just lightly just slide the knife through for nice, thin, easy strokes, just like that. Now, here's an orange, right? And I always tell people, lemons, limes, apples, oranges, tomatoes, cucumbers, kiwis. But if you got a big orange, you need a bigger knife. That knife is way too big, right? Or this orange is way too big. Look at that. That's way better. Because if I try to cut this orange with this knife, I'm doing exactly what I tell my customers they don't need to do anymore, right? I have to saw through it like that. But we want to just engage all three of those blades nice and light, nice and light, nice and thin, right? It's the perfect size. Engage it, level. I'm using the whole length of the blade. You get done faster, your knives stay sharper longer. Now, it's not what you cut, it's what you cut on and how hard you press that dulls the knife, right? It's not what you cut, but what you cut on. Let's talk about the difference between these two tools right here. Okay, this one has a rounded blade, right? And that's because you use this for cutting what? What is every one of your customers going to call this?
Bread knife.
Everybody's going to call it the bread knife. They can have Cutco for 50 years. They'll be like, that's my bread knife. I only use it on bread. And I'm like, whoa, I'm going to teach you all sorts of cool tricks. I love this slicer for cutting oranges. I don't know why. It's just my favorite tool. Because I know that no matter what I do with this knife, it's going to stay sharp. So the slicer that's in my kitchen is from 1952. It belonged to Gina Rodriguez. She used it for until 1995 when I traded her with the slicer right out of my kit. So I bought it from her. It was a straight edge at the time because it was before the double D edge came out. I sent it back to the factory. I had the double D edge put on it, and I've used it in my kitchen for 21 years. It's never been back to the factory, and it's the only slicer I've ever used in my kitchen. Is a 1952 Cutco slicer with the double D edge. And I love this knife on oranges. It's just how I roll.
That's a story that I would like put down 1952 in your training method. And the nice thing about Cutco is you don't have to have that happen to you. You can steal everybody's stories. Don't say you use a 21-year-old slicer, but it's like, oh, we met Mindy from Fairbanks, and she still uses a slicer from 1952.
That letter used to be used nationally by representatives. I got a letter from Gina Rodriguez that was used all across the country by reps. It got picked up on the East Coast, but they put it in their prospectus because it was a really cool testimonial letter that she wrote. Actually, I have to admit I kind of wrote it with her husband, Ron. And they wrote it. They dictated it to me, and I typed it out on the computer. But they're really cool people, right? And so I like the slicer because I know when I use the slicer that knife is not going to get dull. And it's just so smooth. So the difference, right? You get done faster, your knives stay sharper longer, right? So this is a carving knife because it has that sharp tip and that curved blade. Okay? This is also a carving knife, right? For the bigger jobs. Okay? because they have a sharp tip and that curved blade. Because when you're carving something, you want to get nice, clean, even strokes. I can remember I cook a lot of turkeys because I raise them for food. And so one of the things I like is I like turkey breast. And because sometimes I'm lazy, I have 3 trimmers in my block. One of them belonged to my grandmother. She also bought like in 1951 years ago. And so that trimmer is also in I have a very funky block in my kitchen. So that's a straight edge trimmer that's in my block. So I've got that one. I've got a red trimmer, and then I've got this trimmer in my block, right? And they go 1, 2, 3 right up. And sometimes this knife is just out. And I've tried carving a turkey with this before. It literally does not work. So I picked this knife right up here to carve a turkey, and it was a big bird. It was like a 25-pound bird. It really doesn't work. It just really doesn't work. It's too small. So this is going to be used for pork loin, steaks, roast, chicken, your regular everyday jobs for carving. It's also really good for large produce, right? And so we got a pineapple here. And I don't know about you guys, but I love pineapple, right? And so I'm just going to cut the pineapple the way I cut it. Now that was kind of hard to cut. Wait a minute, hard to cut, slicing, hard, slicing. What should I use? Oh my God, what a coincidence. It's right here. It's right here because it's in my set. If you have it, you can use it. So now, much easier, right? So you can use both tools for that job. But if you've got a job that's hard to cut, it's not what you cut, but what you cut on that dulls a knife. This one has more weight. This gives you more leverage so you can do hard to cut jobs. Okay? I'm not cutting very carefully here. Can I just throw all this stuff out?
Yep.
Oh my God, there's children starving somewhere. All right. So you can cut this in a bunch of different ways, right? You can cut this straight down if you want. You can just go straight down like that. One of the things I've learned that I think is really fun that I like to do, so that's like the perfect size, but you still don't have much room to go around. Do you get it? You pick the right tool for the job. Breads, hams, roast, watermelons, cakes. You can shred cabbage and lettuce. You can go through a layer cake. Or you can cut big produce on the length. Mrs. Jones, if you want to cut a pineapple on the round, you can use the petite carver. If you want to cut it on the length, you use the slicer. They both come in your set. Does that make sense? You have the right tool for the job. So I'm going to use the slicer for this. And I'm just going to go right around, right? Slicing. Back and forth, just like that. I think I'm not cutting it all the way on the other side, but you get the point, right? If I was cutting close to me, it would have been better. Okay, now you go all the way down. Okay, all right, so you want to cut it on the round. You can use a petite carver. You can use the Hardy slicer if you want to because it's a bomb diggity knife, right? Right, but you can also, look at that. Right? If I tried to do that with this knife, does it still work? Was that a lot more work, though? Yeah. Right? And I'm running that knife on the board a couple of times. Now, so that's the difference between small, medium, and large. They all have the double D edge, right? But is there a peeler here by chance? Okay. So the teeth are for going back and forth. You want a straight edge knife for 3 things. Jot this down. You want a straight edge knife for working up in the air, coring, pitting, peeling, and skinning your produce. You pair in the air. You pair in the air. I've said that to every single one of my customers for 21 years. You pair in the air. Thank you.